Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. And welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam. We call it a daily yoga podcast because what we do is we teach the essential teachings of the culture of yoga. And it's different than up dog, down dog, jump back, chaturanga. That is a condiment, a beautiful condiment of the yoga system. But there's a deeper teachings. And if you experience India, if you live in an ashram, if you've traveled through the subcontinent of India, if you study yoga philosophy, you'll see it in perspective that our yoga asana practice, which is a very, very beautiful petal. I like this analogy. I just made this one up. It's a very petal of a very beautiful, fragrant flower. But it is that. It's a petal. So we want to go into the understanding of the why. And I think that question's not answered a lot in a regular, hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes yoga class, which is, why am I doing this in the first place? Where are we going with all these jump backs, chaturanga, bend your knees, extend your spine? Where are we going? This move your prana, do a Ayurveda panchakarma cleanse, marma therapy. Come on! Where are we going with all this stuff? Good morning, everybody. The idea is that we are here to connect and reconnect. And this is taught in the yoga philosophy. And they say the essence of all these teachings is this one book, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's 18,000 Sanskrit verses. And so Kaustubha and myself dive into this, and we do it every day. So if you're listening to on the Facebook, you can join us every day. You can hear it on back episodes on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or even just go live, join us live on Zoom. We got about 100 people-ish on Zoom today. And if you'd like to get on that Zoom call, you email Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Today we start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we do question and answer day because it's a big part of our spiritual journey is, what the heck does this mean? Or how am I supposed to apply this to my life? And I think we're going to dive right into the questions today, Mr. Kaustubha. All right. Oh, this is from a great soul. Bhakti-yogi.
No?
No? How am I not getting this?
Oh, maybe. Oh, you know what? Did I not send you? I didn't send you the latest thing. Yeah.
The update? I didn't get the updated. No, Vivi's question? Is this?
Yeah, Vivi's should be on the top.
Oh, yeah, Vivi's is at the top, but it's one small sentence. Okay.
Oh, you just
so
skipped right over that.
Vivi is a longtime listener. She listened to before this was a podcast. She never misses a day, even though she holds an important banking position at a Swiss bank. She's American but lives in Switzerland. Just giving some Vivi background.
She pretends that she's working and she listens to the Wisdom of the Sages every day.
While handling big accounts, trading, selling, buying, purchasing, she's actually just listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam every day. She's just nodding their head. She's in meetings with these people, but she's just hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam because we're witnessing her do that every day. Never misses a class, this lady.
Right.
Okay, so Vivi asked a question this week, and we never got a good answer, but there are some parameters in yoga culture that assist us on our spiritual path. One is there's a control of our sensuality. Anybody who's indulged too much in our sensuality, it leaves us sometimes with like, wow, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? I wasn't using my head. Things that leave us regrets, drinking, intoxication, drugs, etc. But there's one that's brought out of gambling, like no gambling. That's sort of a restriction. And so the question was brought up, why not gambling? And how does gambling isn't like, okay, I understand. I don't want to go to Reno and, spend my entire paycheck and lose everything. It's addictive. But what isn't a lot of the things that we just do in life, like putting our money in the stock market, isn't that gambling? Isn't like, I want something for nothing, basically. I want to put some money here and I want some return. I want other people to do the work for me and I want some return on investment. And it sort of relinquishes our like responsibility and maybe even our hard work that comes with, I worked hard, I created this, and now I'm going to sell this for some money. And so Kaustubha said, well, let's hold off on this. This is a good question. I want to really think about this. So Kaustubha, this is that question. Why is gambling so bad? Sir.
Well, I thought about it. And I appreciate the question so much because the fact is, not only is it, you were mentioning that there are, I'm going to need some time to answer this question, by the way, Rogan. I'm just telling you right now, all right?
I want a quick one sentence, sir. One sentence.
If you wanted one sentence, this is it. Why is gambling so bad? It is a most brash and insolent attempt to circumvent the laws of nature. All right.
Okay. Like laws of nature mean cause and effect, like your karma?
Well, now you want me to give a longer answer. You said you wanted one sentence. I gave it to you.
Okay, so now I'm poking.
Okay. So I'll explain what that means. But I want to say that I appreciate it because you were mentioning, Raghu, just earlier, that within yoga there's parameters, and there's parameters, and then there's like major parameters. So like in our lineage, when we are initiated into this bhakti yoga lineage, actually one takes vows, and one of those vows is that it won't gamble, right? So it's not only a parameter, but it's like this major important parameter somehow. And 30 something years ago I took vows not to gamble. But honestly, I haven't. I suppose there's, I can look and easily see that, there's a lot of inauspiciousness around gambling, and so it was easy one to accept. But I never thought so deeply about it. So this question forced me to think more deeply about it, and I guess I'm sharing my thoughts about it, and here they are, right? So I said it's a most brash and insolent attempt to circumvent the laws of nature. And the idea is that there are laws within this universe that are beneficial for us when we follow them. It's like our living in this world it's almost like say Raghunath, you're Sachi's like 15 years old now, she's getting older, and say,
my daughter.
Your daughter. Say at a certain point she says, well, there's this party that my friends are going to that I want to go to.
Yeah, she's tried that one.
Okay.
Tried that one. It doesn't work. I shut that down.
Okay, so but say it got to the point where you couldn't shut it down anymore, right? It was going to, so it was going to hurt the relationship if you shut it down. So he said, okay, you can go, but I'm going to lay out the parameters. Like here's how it works. None of this, none of that. And the reasons why you would lay out those parameters is because you care so much about her, and you want her to come back from that world that she's stepping into healthy and happy and and safe, right?
Yeah.
So you'd say, okay, no drugs, while you're there, and whatever it is, you would lay out the parameters, and the idea is those parameters are there for her well-being, and out of love that you're providing them. You preferred that she didn't even go to the party, right?
Right.
But you like so
you make
so
you make a what's the word? You make a
some
what's the word,
guidelines.
Mara, help me out here.
Some
Not the guidelines, but you
regulation?
given what's the word? Forget it.
Okay. But in any case, out of your love, out of your care, out of your concern for her well-being, you would provide these guidelines. And so similarly, our journey through this world, in a sense, is like saying, God, I kind of don't want you in the picture. I kind of want to be the center of the whole thing. And those laws of nature ultimately coming from the lawgiver, like, okay, if you want that, you can have it. but here are some rules to make. So while you're wandering around that world, I'm concerned for your well-being, and you're concerned to come back. And so I'm going to provide these guidelines. And these guidelines, you're going to be able to fulfill your desires through these guidelines, but they're going to protect you from going too far and getting too lost, too deep into the illusion, so that it'll become so hard to get out. So I'm going to give you some guidelines.
Sure.
All right? Okay. So when I say it's the most brash and insolent attempt to circumvent those laws, someone may say, well, I still want the things I want in that world, but I don't want to follow your guidelines.
Right.
And so gambling is like that. Now the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to go into it more specifically, and I'm going to go into all 4 of the regulative principles that these vows that one takes when they're initiated into the Gaudiya Vaishnava path of Bhakti-yoga. But within the Gita, you go to the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, beginning with text 9 through 16. I'm going to read these right now. It's the first, text 9 is work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu, for God. It has to be performed. Otherwise, your work in this world, your endeavors to enjoy this world, they cause bondage in the material world. Therefore, O Arjuna, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in this way, you will always remain free from bondage.
The idea is that our working in this world is a deep appreciation.
There's a way
it's
to
done
turn
out of appreciation. That's how it's
appreciation,
internalized.
Say sacrifice, yeah.
Right.
Then he says, in the beginning of creation, when this, and again, the conception from the yogic teachings are that there's creation and destruction, and creating, universes are created and destroyed over vast periods of time. So in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, the guidelines of how to show your appreciation, how to reconnect, and bless them by saying, be happy by this sacrifice, because by its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So you have desires you want to fulfill. I'm going to give you the guidelines. Your desires will be fulfilled, and you'll also find your way out. You'll get back home, right? Demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So it's saying that the rain, the sun, all nature, the food that we eat, it's all coming. There are beings that are providing it, and when you show your appreciation for that, then you'll not only will you get what you want, but you'll be able to get out of that illusion. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by this yajna, by this sacrifice, they'll supply all the necessities for you. But one who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. If you take it and you don't even say thank you, it's just like, well, here it says thief, right? It's a real ignorant way of living. Let's put it that way. Now, the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of bad karma, right? All kinds of negative reactions, because they eat food which is offered first in sacrifice. They eat food first, they offer their gratitude, right? Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment, it says basically they're eating bad karma, right? They're eating negative, reactions.
It's taking without recognizing.
Yeah.
And that everything's been provided for us.
Right. Then he goes on, he says, all living bodies, then he shows how it works. All living bodies subsist on food grains. Where do the food grains come from? They're produced by rains. Where do the rains come from? Rains are produced from performance of sacrifice. And sacrifice is born of prescribed duties. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas. That's where all of this all comes from, all this information about how to live happily in this world. It comes from the Vedas. And the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. So in other words, enjoy the things of this world, but enjoy them in connection, in relation with God. You'll get the things you want, and by that remembrance, you'll get your way out of the entanglement. And then he says, my dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, and gambling is a way of circumventing that. It's an attempt to circumvent that, right? My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin, full of bad karma, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. So let's look at these 4 principles. One is gambling, one is illicit sex, one is eating meat, and one is intoxication. And try to understand the mentality behind it and how it's a negative mentality. So let's look at, for instance, meat eating. Meat eating is like saying, I want to enter into the virtual reality. I want to enter into the material world. I want to forget God, right? And I want the pleasures of the tongue, right? Such is one of the most fundamental types of enjoyment we have in the realm that we're moving around in, right? Pleasures of the tongue.
Sure.
So it says, I want the pleasures of the tongue. And then it's as if God and the devas on God's behalf are saying, fine, but please do it with compassion for everybody else, right? You can enjoy, there's so many wonderful flavors to enjoy. Just do it with some compassion for everyone else. And in a simple way, express some appreciation for the ones that provided the food for you. Otherwise, it'll bind you deeper in illusion, right? And then you respond, no, I want the heavenly pleasures of the tongue, and I don't care if it causes pain to others, right?
People say that all the time. People say that all the time.
Yeah, and I don't feel like humbling myself through some displays of gratitude. What we have there is like a very selfish child, right? That's unconcerned for others. You know, there's so many delicious flavors that we can have in this world. You know, if one is going to say, I don't, you know, that may even be, but I don't even. I'm so flippant about the whole thing. I'm so callous to the sufferings of others that I'm going to go ahead and break that principle and eat whatever or whoever I want. And as far as saying thank you for providing this, I don't even want to recognize that. Okay, that is going to be a harmful attitude to have when it comes to going deep into yoga, when it comes to having a peaceful mind, when it comes to reconnecting with God. It's very brash, you know, and it's ignorant. Now, what about intoxication? I want to feel freedom from restraint and anxiety. That's why people drink. That's why people do drugs, right? I want to feel that freedom from restraint and anxiety. I want to feel power. I want to have deeper insights. These are different reasons why one might, you know, indulge in various types of drugs or alcohol. And then the answer is fine. Hear the sacred texts and practice elevating your mind through through and finding genuine freedom and power and insight, you know, through these yogic teachings. You'll get more power, you'll get more insight, you'll get more freedom than any drug can provide. And someone says, no, you know, I don't want to do that. I just want to take a pill, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Or take sex. I want the heavenly pleasures of sex, right? That most, you know, captivating sense.
Without any responsibility, without any...
Yeah, exactly. So the answer would be fine, you can have that, but it will require some sense of restraint and responsibility. Otherwise, it's going to bind you deeper in illusion. No, I want the heavenly pleasures of sex without any restraint or without any responsibility, right? And then when it comes to gambling, I want prosperity, right? I want wealth. Okay, fine. Work honestly and demonstrate just a little sense of gratitude for the one who's providing all the prosperity through being kind and respectful to others and through some real simple displays of appreciation. Otherwise, it'll bind you deeper in illusion. And someone says, no, I want the prosperity without any work or without any appreciation. I want to roll a pair of dice and walk away with all that prosperity.
Right.
And I don't, and I don't care at all, you know, about putting work in. I don't care at all about being generous to others. I don't care at all, you know, I don't care about any of that. I just want it without anything. It's like you are a spoiled little child, you know, and that mentality, it's going to bring harm to yourself. So therefore the regulation is there. You know, if you want to be a yogi, you have to become mature. You have to open your mind. You have to see what is. You have to wake up. And therefore, you know, you take karma, the idea behind karma yoga, right, is, okay, I'm living in this world and I'm not going to turn my back and renounce it and walk away from it all like a hardcore Jnani yogi does. I don't have that level of renunciation. I still want to, you know, there's still something in me that wants to enjoy this world, and it's hard for me to completely block that off. So in karma yoga, the idea is, okay, you can do that. You can be in this world. You can still have your relationships and your social roles and so on. Do the work and make that work an offering to me, and offer the results of that fruit, to me. The higher stage of karma yoga is I do the work without attachment to the results, right? And then karma kanda, which is a lower form, but at least it's following some level that's not going to bind you too much, is I do the work and I'm attached to the results. And gambling is I don't want to do the work and I want the results. It's like entirely, and it's the exact opposite of karma yoga. And so I think that has something to do with what is so wrong about it. Why is gambling so bad? It's like saying it's just a complete brash, insolent flaunting of the laws of nature, saying, I don't care. The laws of nature saying, here, just a little self-control and a little bit of thinking about where this all comes from and a little bit of appreciation. No, I don't want any of that. I just want the things of this world. It's like a spoiled child. And it'll become, the idea in initiation, when one's initiated into the mantra, is that through this, by deeply absorbing my mind in this mantra, my mind will become transformed and freed and spiritualized. But if I'm living a lifestyle that's antithetical to that, that's entirely opposite to that, then all those efforts aren't going to go anywhere. So when one's initiated into the lineage, the guru is giving the mantra, and the guru is saying, but for this to work, you're going to need to live the right lifestyle. Otherwise, it's like you're trying to light a fire and you're pouring water on it at the same time. And so these four principles are there to help us go deep, deep, deep into that mantra. All right? How's that sound? You all right with that, Raghu?
It's beautiful.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
That's. I think we need to.
It's complete. It's complete. You're going through everything. I still didn't truthfully, I still didn't get the idea of, well, how does this deal with the stock exchange though? That was sort of one of the questions.
Sure.
Okay. Like are people they're investing in the stock market? Isn't that gambling? That was like one of the genesis.
So questions. This would be my answer. So again, if we're saying that it's a brash and insolent attempt to circumvent the laws of nature, and therefore we can see, if we're just a little observant, we'll see where there is gambling, inauspiciousness tends to arise in those areas, in those places, right? We see that when someone gets in, someone may, I play the numbers once a week and, and it's not going to affect them so much. But then other people begin to really get into it. I start to play the horses, right?
Well,
just hear me out. Hear me out.
Real estate investment.
I'm going there. I'm working towards that. Just a little patience with me. Hear me out. All right. So that's like a mild thing. But the more deep it goes, we see that people, it becomes addictive, and it begins to bring a lot of inauspiciousness. Around areas where we see like gambling. You go to Atlantic City, it's full of crime. It's full of suffering.
Not talking about that though.
I'm going to get there. Hear me out. I'm just illustrating something. I'm saying the stronger that more direct form of gambling is, the more inauspiciousness we see, the more pain, the more destruction, the more crime, and so on. And then I would say to the lesser degrees, you're going to see that too. You're going to see the inauspiciousness to lesser degrees. So you take the stock market, right? Now, I don't know so much about the stock market and all, but I do from what I've gathered from movies, from television and stuff like that. What I understand is that a lot of people that are deep into the stock market, they practically are like gamblers, right? A lot of dishonesty starts to play into it, and a lot of wild, reckless behavior, and a lot of destroyed lives, through it. Whereas there may be other people that are involved in the stock market that it's a more sober kind of thing that's actually less just rolling dice and more like, my work is the deep study of the economy and how businesses work. It's something I need to educate myself about that. Before I invest in this business, I need to look deep into that business, understand what their intentions are, what their plan is. It's not just rolling, some dice. it's actually a form of, a form of work which involves understanding what are reliable investments. But still, it's a little closer to gambling than, like, say, farming, And so it's a lifestyle that's.
Well,
It's
they
a
could
little
say
bit
you could argue that farming's a gamble also, because you don't know what the return
You can
on
argue that
your
anything in the
investment.
world is gambling. And there's nothing in this world that's like certain.
So
right?
what is the actual line that you can't
Well,
do
I'm-
then?
I'm-
Because you
what
can't say I can't farm.
What I'm trying to tell you is that it's gray, right? It's gray, but we should understand, to the extent that I'm trying to circumvent the idea of offering my work to God and depending and showing appreciation and depending on God for the results, to the extent that I steer away from that, to that extent, I'm bringing in that inauspiciousness. And so, are some people that play the stock market, more or less gambling? I'd say probably yes. Are some doing less so? I'd say, yeah, that's probably true too. It's a gray line. Therefore, I think even traditionally, certain people look at certain people, like, for instance, people often say that, like, farming is such a noble profession, or I think some people even say it's like the most noble.
I think they're the filthiest gamblers, truthfully. Those farmers.
Well,
they're
you're
the
wrong.
worst. They're the worst. There's a whole 12-step meeting for, like, Farmers Anonymous. These guys are, hi, I'm
You see, that's
Jeremy.
the
I'm a
point.
farmer.
They don't have Farmers Anonymous. You don't need it. because it's like, it's hard work, but it's right. The connection with God is so obvious there. Like in agricultural communities, generally you don't have atheists there. Because you're planting the seed, you're watching it grow. It's such an auspicious atmosphere.
Haven't you ever heard of Big Pharma, man?
Well, that's what that is when the stock market gets into farming and they take it over. That's a whole different thing. Those aren't farmers. Those are financial people. All right, so that's what I came up with, Vivi. I hope that's helpful.
Truthfully, I think we could have a couple hour show just on that question, like break it apart. Because as you were speaking, I was like, oh, I got an answer for this. I got an answer for this. There, in different ways. But
you mean challenges? You want to challenge?
No, not challenges, but they need
let's
to
go.
be
Bring it
teased.
on.
Come on, let's have a farming debate. I think we need to. It's one of these things that can really be teased out.
Sure.
But
yeah, but
good.
My point is this: I think the most the vein in which we'd find the most valuable insights on this have to do with seeing it in this context, right? That within this world there are laws of nature. Those laws of nature help us keep our consciousness relatively pure and becoming deeply bound in ignorance. And then in trying to understand what is it about sexuality that potentially binds us, about gambling, about intoxication, etc. I think it's within that context that we'll find our deepest insights. And I also just want to say, it's not just a question like these are rules. This is evil, and you don't even understand why. It's from the yogic perspective, you can understand why it's detrimental rather than just saying it's evil and it's bad.
For sure.
Okay. Sure. All right, Raghunath.
All right, what you got for me?
Let's see what I got for you. I got a hard question for you.
What you got?
And this comes from Daily Zoomer, Bhakti Matthew.
Matthew, we call him Matthew the Eager.
Yeah, Matthew the
like
Eager.
John the Baptist, Matthew the Eager, Arumar the Grateful, and Seth the Welder. These are regulars on the show.
I had to. This is a long question, so I had to edit it down. But hopefully we'll capture the essence of it. So this is for Raghuji. Why, Raghu? Why not me? But this is for Raghuji. I want to thank you for the wonderful answers and explanations you've already shared on the topic of resentment. Thank you, Raghu. They have helped me tremendously, and I need to dive deeper with you and get uncomfortable, perhaps. Okay. Like others, maybe, I feel like my story is the worst. That I can't heal the damage done by other people's actions and my own thoughts. But hopefully some others feel the same way and can benefit from your answer. Okay, and then this is the part that I edited down, but then Matthew lists like it was like a list of memories from his childhood that cause feelings of loneliness or neglect. That's how I would characterize it. Okay, so it was about like 6 different things he listed from his childhood, that ways he was treated by his family and things like that. He said, my early years were full of loss and abandonment, and like a feeling of what, and they were like a feeling of, what are you doing here? You know, what am I doing here in this world? Or maybe he meant by that people were making him feel like, what are you doing here? Because of this, I have held negative feelings, mainly toward my brother, but generally to all my family members. While we get along, I guess, our ties are not tight. I now understand that these experiences weren't done to harm me, and I forgive both myself and my family. But I can't forget these experiences, and they'll always be with me. They have done and do affect my behavior and relationships. I have ended relationships seemingly out of the blue, leaving the other party in shock. Years later, I wonder why I did that. Besides chanting Hare Krishna, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and associating with good people, what can I do? Thank you. God bless you, Raghunath.
God bless you too, Kaustubha.
God
And
bless
peace be
Matthew.
with you, and also with you. Lift
May
up
the
your
force
hearts.
be with you.
Let the force be with you. Great question, Eager Matthew. Eager Matthew is getting hijacked by the abandoned child, and is hijacking his present day. And that, his reaction as the abandoned child wants to sabotage all that's good in his life. And so he'd even risk ruining a pretty great relationship as long as that person doesn't do a 180 and walk away from them. To see the backside of someone walking out the door is much more like triggering than just
Slamming the door yourself.
Yeah. So we'd rather just slam it than be walked away from. I think a lot of people can relate to this. You know, me and my wife, one of our rituals Saturday morning is to read the questions together. We just like talk all these, and we're both reading a book right now, Emotional Intimacy. Really good book by Robert Augustus Masters, who wrote this other great book, Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. These are like people who want to dig deep into the whys of like what's the genesis sometimes of all these problems. Now in Bhakti, it's okay to dig deep psychologically, like what went off, where did we get unrailed at a certain point historically in our, in the Western world, we'll deal with things like, in your childhood, in these, where your mind was really created from age 0 to 5, a lot of things happened. You took deep notes and you transfer them to your adult life, and they affect us in positive and negative ways. That's transference theory. That being said, there comes a point where Matthew's at, and a lot of us get to, where we're sort of fed up with our dentedness, our behavior, and whatever happened in the past, how much am I going to let that influence today? Whatever happened in the past, happened in the past. How much longer am I going to let that influence today and my choices for tomorrow? And it gets to be this very frustrating thing, and I totally get it. In a 12-step group, they have these things which are very cool. They call it a moral inventory. You go deep into your past and you find out, well, in this case, I was thinking I would go deeply into where red flags would go off, like where I've sabotaged my life and what were the triggers that made me sabotage my life. Where was there like black ice in my choices where I was spinning out of control? Like that one, black ice. I usually use sinkhole in such cases, but I said black ice today.
What is black ice exactly?
It's when the ice is so clear, it's like black. You're seeing the tar, and you cannot stop your car, and you spin out of control.
I see.
Black ice.
Black ice.
Anyway, so I just wanted to pat myself on the back for a good analogy there, but since no one's saying anything in return, I'll just keep
black
going.
ice. That was great.
Yeah, good,
Black.
Raghu. Keep going there. What's the answer to the question? So where did things go out of control? Like when I ended that relationship abruptly. So we write all these things down. And when we see he's in a conscious choice where he's like, what have I done? Why am I doing this to myself in the future? And I think it's important to start to recognize it. And then you start to write down all the times these happened, all the times. When do you get in car accidents? When I speed. When do I get in car accidents? When I check my iPhone while driving. When do I get in car accidents? When I back up without looking and I hit a fire hydrant. That's the times I've got in car accidents in my life. Okay. So I note those things down for future times when these things appear again. So red flags will go up. You know, and sometimes in cars nowadays, when you're backing in, they'll go beep, 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 like on a new car. Or if you're going, my wife's car, it's like you swerve out of the lane, it'll go, dee, 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 dee. They'll give you like some little warning signal, like lane changing signal. Sometimes the car will even pull you back on track. We need those red flags. We need those beep, 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 beeps in our life to drag us back to right to our lane. And when you first identify them, just like an alcoholic can identify that they're an alcoholic. And they come to a point where they either friends or due to hitting rock bottom, where they say, I am an addict and I'm wrecking my life. I'm wrecking my family. I'm wrecking my future, etc. So he's at this point where he's recognizing, what am I doing? Why am I letting the past influence my future and my present? And so and then at this point, you can really go back in historically and really find where these other times where you've done it as well. So it takes a lot of deep inner work to get to start to notice these things. Sometimes people really need to do that work, and it can come off like in if you're not addicted to these things that really throw you off course, like gambling, you were saying, some of these things can throw you off course. You know, you can sort of skate through life in a lighter way, but still you're going to have to come to terms with where am I masking my connection with the divine? Where am I finding an easy way? Like sometimes these addictive things or these problematic things, they really tragically affect our life that we're forced to go deep and turn to God. And so this is a blessing, actually, as much as it seems like a curse. He's got a great blessing going on here. So I think that it's going to have to do some of that inner work, because if he keeps on sabotaging future as he goes on, it's going to play out in resentment and offenses that he's going to bring into his spiritual circles, and that's not going to be helpful. The fact that he's carrying this resentment for brothers and sisters, he mentioned it a little bit deeper in the full question, but oftentimes we carry resentment for parents or brothers or siblings that really, they were just surviving. It wasn't sometimes even a bad thing, but the way we take it on as a child is a bad thing. You know, parents, due to some reason, they had to get a divorce. It was just so terrible they couldn't do it, or they were too immature, they couldn't do it. But as a 4-year-old, I interpret that as dad doesn't love me because he has a new family. And I take the burden of the divorce on myself. And we really have to go through and sometimes work on that, because I'll always go through this world with a theory like, I'm not worth it, I'm unlovable, etc. And it plays into our spiritual reality. So sometimes when we find that's affecting us in a deep way, we have to find good people who can help us get out of that.
So by that work, you're saying you do the work and find good people. Are you talking like a professional, like a psychiatrist? Is that
it can be a professional, and hopefully that professional is grounded a little bit with a spiritual background as well. It could be a devotee, it could be a trained professional who deal with some type of trauma issues, etc. But some people really have to deal with those things, especially
what about
if it's
Bhakti Recovery Group?
Bhakti Recovery can definitely help, but sometimes if the trauma is so severe, you need that type of checking in. Like sometimes these addictive things, I'm not saying in this case, but sometimes like a drug addiction, a sex addiction, gambling addiction, stuff like that. They are so deeply woven into what we've been, because we've been practicing them. Sometimes people can hide a cocaine addiction for 20 years, a gambling addiction or sex addiction for 10 years, something like that. They can hide it. And therefore they've become liars to a community and liars to themselves. And it's almost become part of their identity. And so they have to undo this granny knot of complicated mind. And it's not like a therapy session for 50 minutes is going to help. It needs, and that's why we have this great Bhakti recovery. If you're new to this, we have a great Bhakti recovery group, which meets many days a week. And you need to check in on a regular basis, meaning every day, sometimes twice a day, if you've been living that life. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's hard to go to a professional unless you're very wealthy or great health insurance to go to a professional every day, but to have a person you can check in with. That's why the 12-step group works so hand in hand with Bhakti, because it's people just taking care of people. And people have walked the path a few steps ahead of you, and people who are trying to help with just a lot of times just hearing. There's a big shout out for our Bhakti recovery group people. Hopefully that's a little helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Raghu.
Whew, these are big things. Big things. And you know what is part of the house cleaning is you move the couch. I always say this. You move the couch and you find a bunch of junk under the couch. You don't notice the junk until you clean the house, until you move the furniture and you realize how dirty it is, till you move those couch cushions and find potato chips, rubber bands, coins, etc. Okay, this is one from Jason Stice. Greetings, everyone. One thing I really like about the show presents Bhakti Yoga. One thing I really like about how the show presents Bhakti Yoga is that so much of it boils down to one's intention, or what is the heart's focus. Having said that, what connection does our intention have with respect to regulative principles? So Kaustubha just went into this whole thing about these principles we try to follow. For example, I've struggled to stop drinking. I thought to myself, if only I could retain a straight edge conviction of my youth. I guess Jason was straight edge, which means you didn't drink or smoke. I thought to myself, if only I could retain the straight edge conviction. I even thought I shouldn't be doing this. It's repelling Krishna. But a while back, I had to take go on some long. What is
I
that?
think he had to stop. A while ago, I had
on some long-term medication.
I had to take some long-term medication.
Okay, I had to take some long-term medication that could potentially cause liver damage. So I said, aha, this is my chance. I have not had a drink since. Okay, so he was at the risk of, if I don't, I'm going to have to take some powerful.
This drinking is really going to destroy my liver if I'm also taking this. So now I'm going to stop.
So out of fear, he had to stop. Okay. So he's saying, so isn't this change of behavior rooted in bodily fixation, or a fear, or does it matter since there's a greater payoff? I'm ultimately, I'm not drinking. Who cares of the why? Right. Thank you for time and everything you do. Thank you, Jason. Kaustubha, what you got?
I think it's a really interesting question, and I like the question in the sense that he's saying, okay, you see what it gets to, and it's a little bit of what I mentioned in the last question, towards the end of the last question, is the regulations that we have in life that are handed down in the yoga tradition. The yogis don't see these as just, this is sin and it's bad, but they can understand how it's bad, right? How it's harmful, how it's detrimental to my elevating my consciousness and uncovering the happiness, which is my own true nature. And so hear what Jason is saying. I should be motivated to follow those principles, not out of fear, but out of love. In other words, why should I, let's get to the parent-child analogy again, right? Raghunath, you have a child and you've laid out certain guidelines, and the child may be like, Dad told me don't drive the car, when I'm drunk, I guess, or something like that, right? And it's like, and the child could respond by saying, I don't like that rule. I'm not going to follow that rule. And then they get drunk and they get in a crash, and then they say, okay, I'll follow the rule. And another way would just be like, Dad, I love you so much. If you don't want me to drive drunk, I won't drive drunk. Right? It's kind of like a higher level of being, or a higher level of thinking, You understand?
Yeah.
And so, so here's a regulative principle, don't drink. And Jason is saying, just out of my affection for God, I wasn't able to follow it. But when it started to offer some real scary bodily, disease kind of problem with my liver, then I saw suddenly I had the fortitude to follow that.
Right.
And so, okay, great realization, great insight in your own life, great examination of one's own mind and how it works and so on. And I think you're poking at and you're getting at that idea that I want a deeper connection with God, I want to move, and there is, you can even apply that to, like, for instance, these things are really, there's some really interesting things laid out, say, by some of our great Bhakti writers, and philosophers. And the idea of the difference between Vaidhi Bhakti and Rag Marg, right? Like, Vaidhi Bhakti means, like, I follow the rules and regulations out of a fear that if I don't, well, where am I going to be? Right? If I don't wake up early, if I don't follow these principles, if I don't meditate for 2 hours a day, if I don't, then I'm just going to get lost and bound, and I need to do it. So I don't even have a taste or some spontaneous feeling of love that's driving me, but I'm doing it because I fear what will happen to me if I don't. And that's valid and that's good that someone follow that, but it's working towards a deeper level of realization, which we call Rag Marg. Rag literally means my attachment, right? Out of my attachment for God, I follow. Out of my taste for, like, in other words, I might wake up early in the morning and do 2 hours of meditation on God's names. And I'm doing it because I don't want to become more bound by illusion in this world. I don't actually like doing it, right? I don't have a lot of taste for doing it, but I know it's good for me and I do it. I know it's bad for me not to do it. But then there comes a time where one has a breakthrough, where one goes deeper into the goal of this all, which is called Rag Marg, where I chant those names because I love it. Even if it's what I would be doing anyway, because there's such a taste for it. So I think Jason's question, it's just a really good self-analysis. I see that when things that I don't follow out of to please God, I do it when I'm going to have some physical pain caused by it. And that's made him introspective. It's made him think that I want to go deeper. So, I don't have much to say more than that, but hey, great. It's great that you're following it one way or another.
Right.
But this path is always about deepening the purity of that intention, right? That's really what Bhakti is all about, is making that intention more and more pure. And we're all on that path, trying to move in that direction. So good for you, Jason, and please keep it up. All right.
Thank you, Kaustubha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaustubha.
We got one more for you, Raghu.
Hit me.
It's from Harshal Gore.
Harshal Gore. Question every week. Harshal Gore.
Firstly, thank you for getting me through the Christmas break. I had COVID. Oh, no.
Oh.
Harshal, sorry to hear that. And was very unwell.
Whenever I hear that, I've had COVID, it's almost like I went to Vietnam and I lived. It's like people have gone through COVID. They have the experience. They can share it.
Yeah.
We're glad you're out of it, Harshal.
Okay. But joining your Sangha every morning gave me the beacon of light I needed every day. Well, that's good to hear. And thank you. It's very
the sages are in the pages.
The sages are in the pages. I fully recovered now. Excellent. We're living through so much material pain right now. It's making me think. Okay, here it comes. Ready?
Here it comes. He's been thinking. Harshal's been thinking.
What have
Careful.
you been thinking, Harshal? Careful, Harshal. It's making me think, why has Krishna created this material existence for us to suffer so much?
What's up with Krishna? What's up with him?
Why did he do it? It feels
Rascal.
it feels just a tad unfair.
It's unfair. That's
There's
the
so
mantra
much-
of the materialist.
There is so much suffering close to us at a national level, at a global level. I know our material fate is subject to birth, death, old age, and disease, and the reactions of fruitive activities, karma. I get all that. But going through the experience we're all going through right now is pretty challenging. It's easy to say focus on Krishna. We will eventually go to him. and do more Shravanam and Kirtanam, do more of your yogic practices. But the nasty material stuff doesn't go away. Just need to watch the news. So the question, why has Krishna created the three kinds of miseries, Adiyatmaka, Adibhautika, Adidaivaka? Feels a tad unfair, he says again. As we can't, when he says tad, I think he means a lot.
Yeah.
It's just maybe that's a polite British way of saying a lot unfair. Just tad. A tad. It feels a tad unfair.
Yeah, tad. Give me a spot of chai, please.
It feels just a spot unfair, doesn't it?
Just a spot.
All right. feels a tad unfair, isn't it? As we can't control them, we can't control these miseries. And
Are you winding me up? I'm having a go?
On your bike, then. And why has he put us in this virtual reality of misery? I didn't ask to be put here. Okay.
Yeah.
Take it away, Raghu.
In our first world, Hollywood-dominated culture, we've been sold a romantic concept of what life is. Okay. We've been sold a romantic concept of what life is. And if you like nature, I love nature. And if you just sit outside, if you actually just go into nature and sit down, you don't even have to go far. Just sit down in the grass and look. You will start finding beautiful things like flowers, the flowers you didn't even notice that are growing. Nothing is ordinary in nature. Like the blade of a grass is a work of art. You crack a stick and you look at the rings of a stick or the bark of a tree. It's like fascinating, beautiful. And then springtime comes and more blossoms come, and a bee comes, and he takes the pollen and he creates the honey. And it's amazing how the bees are working together like in a massive, perfectly ordered society, exponentially better than what we've created with our political nightmare. But you also see some of the most cruelest things. You see like a bunch of ants stuff, like ripping apart a gigantic other bug, and attacking it when it's weak. Nothing dies of natural causes. You don't die of old age in the forest. You die because you get weak, and then other animals start to pick you off. And nature is incredibly cruel. It's like mother nature.
It's a tad cruel.
It's a spot cruel. You having a go? You having a go at me, Kaustubha? So nature is a tad cruel, and it's a tad wonderful. Right? Because people, sometimes you pull into a beautiful, you see a beautiful cliff with a beautiful quarry, and you see a beautiful pond, and you jump off that cliff, and it's like exhilarating and fun and joyful, and the water's cool, and it cools you down after a hot summer day. And then somebody else does it, and they break their neck. And it's like, oh, that's the quarry where the kid broke their neck. It's like we've all had these like incredible highs, incredible lows of the material world. That is the material world. It's not a romantic.
Why?
Yeah.
Why did he do this to us?
And it's our choices that perpetuate the material world. Our choices. And we have to take a responsibility for our material existence. We want to pass it off. Teenagers generally say this. I had my teenager say this to me once. I didn't ask to be born. Right? That's a class I'm sure I've said that before. And it's one of these things a teenager said. I didn't ask for this. And my response to that was, you did ask for this. That's your theory. Mm-hmm. My theory is you did ask for this, and you chose me as your father.
You even did that.
You did that too. You actually you opted in and like you signed
really
here to accept the contract. I mean, your theory is you didn't ask for this. That is one theory. Another theory is you completely asked for it. And if you want to challenge that theory, I would say, come on. You've never willingly chosen chaos. You've never willingly opted in for, you knew what you were doing might have been illegal or wrong or risky. You've never done that in your life. We do it all the time. We do it sometimes with our meal. I'm not hungry, but I'm going to eat more anyway. Right? We do that with so many times we're gambling in existence with our choices. Right. So we're perpetuating things. Now, the beautiful thing is we're getting exactly what we need to write our incredible autobiography. There's an incredible autobiography, how wherever you got, especially if you feel like you've been hurt, you've been, you're punished in this world, or it's not fair. If that's your story, you should understand, flip the script.
Flip the script.
Flip the script.
Otherwise, you lost the plot, mate.
Yeah. Because what's going on right now is you have an incredible story to tell, and you can live in why me forever, or you can say, thank God that happened, and this is what I've done with it. And that is what people want to read in a great book, in a great autobiography. It's like how this guy took these circumstances, which were like, it seemed like the entire world was working against him, and he flipped the script and he did something great with it.
Nice.
And people do that all the time, and those books are incredibly inspirational. And if you feel like you've got the world stacked against you, if you can figure it out and come to terms with what you've got and how it's a blessing, that's going to be a bestseller, and I'm going to want to read that book.
Yeah, because when you read books on like how to write scripts and stuff like that, what they tell you to do is
hero's journey.
Yeah, what they say is you have your hero, and then you have to give them some trouble.
Give them some trouble.
And then you have to give them more trouble, and then when you're done with that, you give them still more trouble, and then more trouble.
Right. Imagine if you're the football coach and you're going like, okay, what's going on? Well, we got a game coming up, and so what are we going to do today for practice? We're going to go get ice cream. We're going to get ice cream during practice? Yeah. No, football players or any type of athletic person, they're going through training. They're going through hell week. They're preparing for the big fight, whatever it is. They're drilling repeatedly. They're doing stuff they don't want to do. Why? Because it's going to prepare them for something great.
It might feel like a tad unfair.
Yeah, it seems like unfair. Why is this coach such a jerk? Some of us have had great teachers or parents that have really laid lines, drawn lines in the sand for us that almost seem like, come on, man. And then we look back and thank God thank God for that, right? And only children will come to this point and say life is unfair. Part of our maturity is to say, thank you. This is exactly what I needed. Thank you for this. It's a big stage, and some people are asked to really step into that thank you. But that's what we're asked. That's our hero's journey. Good luck, Herschel Gore.
All right. Thank you for that, Raghunath. That was great.
Thank you, sir. Harold Brissy, he's been trying to get this question out for weeks, and it keeps on getting shoved to the back.
Okay. We got to do it quick, though, huh?
Why did Buddha Shakyamuni reject the Vedic scriptures in total? Right? So Buddha came later, after the Vedas have already been around for literally like 3,000 years. And then the Buddha came and he just said, stop following the Vedas. Why? Why did he reject it? He was born into a Hindu family. He was born into, like, everybody's practicing, quote, Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma. Why did he reject it? Kaustubha, he's an enlightened being. Come on, Kaustubha.
Srimad Bhagavatam talks about it.
Srimad Bhagavatam talks about Buddha. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. Even it predicted him, right? Because Buddha lived, what, it was like something like 2,500
2,000 years ago. No, 2,500 years ago.
Something like that, yeah. Whereas Bhagavatam goes back further than that. So in the Bhagavatam, you have a list of the avatars. This was the first canto, 3rd chapter, which we recapped not long ago, right? And it gives a whole list of avatars, different appearances of Krishna. And one of those was in the future from when Bhagavatam was spoken.
It predicts avatars from the future. Isn't that interesting?
Avatars of the future. It mentioned his name. It mentioned his mother. It mentioned where he would be born. All of that's mentioned in Canto 1, Chapter 3, Text 24.
Which is interesting because he wasn't actually born there, but that's where he received enlightenment. He said he'll be born in Gaia, but that's where he's actually reached enlightenment.
Okay. But so there it mentions that, and this, sometimes, again, this language sounds harsh, but it says he was actually born, his purpose was to delude those who are envious of the faithful theists. And what that means is, when it says he was to delude, the idea was that within the 4 Vedas, the books ancient books that show how to live a pious materialistic life and reap, like, quote unquote, the good things in life. There's instruction, how to live. And in general, they're books that are going to show you how to cultivate good karma. But it recognizes that eating meat brings bad karma. But it also is flexible enough, let's say, to recognize that certain people, even though they hear that, will still eat meat. So in order to kind of like, okay, if you're going to do it then, and if you insist on doing it, then do it like this. And it describes how if you want to eat meat, then kill the animal yourself. And as before you kill it, you have to speak into its ear. This mantra, which basically says, as I'm killing you now, I will be killed in the future. So it's really meant to like instill within one, the consciousness that this is not good for me. It's not good for anyone. It's cruel. It's something I need to give up.
He's making a concession. That was the word I
concession.
was looking for previously.
Yeah.
A concession. Concession.
It's a concession. Along with that concession, it's meant to, through that ritual, it's meant to cultivate the idea that this is really something I should be giving up. But what happens with concessions sometimes, Raghu?
Sometimes concessions, you just go with it and you forget about the purpose that it is a concession.
Yeah, and you just
And what
start
you
to
do is it
take
just becomes a
advantage of the
normal
concession.
Yeah.
So there's like, okay, if you're going to kill animals, you do it like this. And then you're just like, hey, killing animals is okay. It says so right in the Vedas. Right?
Yeah. It says right here.
And so the idea is that in Buddha's time, that concession was being abused severely and animal slaughter was becoming widespread. And so the Buddha's response to that would say, okay, you know what? Reject the Vedas. Right? And he took so much of the teachings of the Vedas, like karma, reincarnation, all those fundamental kind of things, all of that, so much of that jnana, and he taught it, and that became Buddhism. But he taught it without the teachings of the Vedas and without a personal God, without a conception of a personal God. But, there's an article, if you want to go deeper into this, there's an article written by, a friend of ours, Ravinder Swarup Das,
Yes.
called Spiritual Strategies for the Age of Iron.
Let's get him on the show.
Yeah, we should.
Let's ask him, petition him.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Lives local.
Lives local to you. And it describes there that like throughout the ages, the idea was that first there was the Vedic civilization, then Buddha, because of the animal slaughter, took people to reject the Vedas, but still, and have an impersonal Vedic, conception. And then Shankara, who is Shiva, right? Buddha is Krishna. Shankar, who is Shiva, he brings people back. He brings the Buddhists back to the Vedas by teaching the Vedas, but maintaining the non-personal idea of Buddhism. So to do that, he has to interpret or twist the Vedic teachings a bit. And then great acharyas like Ramanuja and those following him would then teach the Vedas from a personal point of view. So it's a whole little journey like that civilization goes through, away from the Vedas,
right,
to Buddhism, from Buddhism to Advaita Vedanta, from Advaita Vedanta to Bhakti. It's a path. So that's, if you read that article, Spiritual Strategies for an Iron Age, you can go deeper into that.
Spiritual Strategies for the Iron Age
right.
by Ravindra Swarup. I'll put that
Dasa
name on the board.
Yeah.
Gosh, there we go.
Mara's got it.
Mara's already on it.
Mara's on it.
All right. Well,
hey, we're taking a vacay now, right?
What's that?
2 days off.
We're taking a 2-day vacation. I'm flying to Colombia with a posse. Yeah. And it's like we're having like a stormy ice storm today, right now up here. And by the way, sometimes people write in and we can't answer them every week. And even today's show, we couldn't answer all the questions. We keep them, we send them, and if we didn't send them, just write us another email and remind us, hey, please answer that question. Sometimes the questions end up getting answered for you by someone else's question, because we all, even though we're so different, we have different stories. We're the same in so many ways. I hope that was helpful. And people listening on Apple, what are they listening today? Facebook. Join us every day. Every day we do this class on the Bhagavatam, 5 a.m., or you can just listen to it on Apple Podcasts. YouTube, you can listen to on YouTube, and you can subscribe, and you can like it, and you can comment. Everybody go to YouTube right now and just comment. Just say something. on one of our shows.
Anything?
Anything whatsoever. And yes. All right, don't. Not anything. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate it. We have a sweet, sweet, beautiful, wonderful community here, and I'm honored to be part of it. It lifts me up every morning.
Show up where you belong.
And we will see you Tuesday when I land in Colombia. Say some prayers that I land in Colombia. And for those who are our Patreon members, we're doing Patreon. You go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. If you like what we're doing, you can support us that way, and it makes a huge difference. But next week, we're going to be trying to hook up Sweet Baby Krishna, which is stories of Krishna's pastimes and prayers live from Colombia. So, yeah, we'll let you know about that as it happens. It's a Sweet Baby Krishna marathon.
Right.
Thanks, everybody. Now, the most important part of our day, singing and dancing to a computer. What?